I had a client who was wrongfully accused. I was going to get the charges dropped, but then he switched lawyers. It was Kurt. I didn't really like talking to him, but I couldn't avoid him. We were classmates in law school. Kurt had finished near the bottom, and I was near the top, but he was doing great, and I was struggling. I told Kurt I was doing okay. "What you got today?" he asked. I had a bail hearing. I was starting to do more contested bail hearings because bail court was always full of people, and it was a great place to find clients. You show up, fight for your client, and if you're lucky, you get another client. On a good day, you might even get two. "Just a bail hearing," I said. "What about you?" "I have 5 guilty pleas," said Kurt. He was trying not to sound excited, but you could tell he was happy. "Wow, that's great, Kurt." Kurt was a dump truck. Back in the 1990s, that's what we called lawyers like him. Lawyers who only knew one plea, guilty. Kurt was going to make 5 people plead guilty that day. The legal aid plan was going to give him lots of money for making his clients plead guilty. He'd leave the courthouse with a lot more money. "I've opened 20 files this month," he continued. "Things are going really great. How about you?" "I'm doing okay," I said, and went to do my bail hearing. I walked into the courtroom and sat in the front, waiting for things to start. While I waited, I thought about why Kurt had so many clients and I had so few. Kurt went to law school when he was older. He was in his mid-30s when we started, but he was about 40 now. Maybe being older helped him. He had a little bit of gray hair, but I didn't have any gray hair. I looked pretty young. Maybe that's why I wasn't getting clients. Maybe I should grow a beard or something, make myself look a little older. Then court started, and I sat there waiting for my client's case to be called. We didn't have smartphones back then, so I just watched as the judge started going through his cases. A few people agreed to what the judge said, a couple of cases were moved to another day, and one client argued with the judge. The judge sent the arguing client back to jail. Then it was my client's turn. "I don't think this is a contested hearing," said the prosecutor. "We're willing to let him out of jail, but with conditions." I explained that my client didn't want any conditions other than to keep the peace and stay out of trouble. The judge sighed and told the prosecutor to get on with it. So the prosecutor put the complainant on the stand. My client's ex-wife came to court to tell the judge what happened. She told the court that my client had hit her and pushed her down the stairs at his house. When she finished, I stood up to question her. My client had told me a very different story. He said his ex-wife fell down the stairs, and that she made up other things, too. "I believe you have a conviction for prostitution?" I started right away. I like getting to the point. "Yeah, but I got a pardon, so it doesn't count," the ex-wife said. That was a pretty good start. It got even better when the woman admitted that she was a heavy drinker and had problems with alcohol. She said she was not allowed to go to family events, that she knew she wasn't welcome at her ex-husband's house. And finally, she said that she had been arrested for drunk driving after she left her ex-husband's house. After she took a breathalyzer test at the police station, the officer noticed she had some bruises. She told the officer that her ex-husband had hurt her at a family event. After I was done asking her questions, I put my client's current wife on the stand. She was an eyewitness to everything, including the ex-wife's drunken fall. After she finished her testimony, the prosecutor leaned over to me and said that he was going to drop the charges. That was a pretty good result for me, a young lawyer. But not really. My client was innocent, and the prosecutor's witness was a liar. Still, I was feeling proud of myself. "Eat that, Kurt," I thought as I walked out of the courtroom. "Eat that, you dump truck." I left the courtroom and headed to the lawyer's lounge to tell everyone about my success. I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and saw an older guy. "I need a lawyer," he said. He was maybe 50, which to me was pretty old. I recognized the man. He was in court for a change of bail conditions, and he agreed to it. He was just hanging around waiting for some paperwork. "I remember you. You're the guy charged with destroying a house." I didn't totally destroy it. That was true. The house was still standing, but he had used a chainsaw and other tools to do a lot of damage. By the time the bank took him out of the house, it was a mess. The man was upset because the bank had kicked him out for not paying his mortgage. I asked if he had any paperwork. He pulled out the bail conditions, one of which said he had to keep his paperwork on him at all times. I glanced at it. Charged with damaging a mortgagee's interest in a property. Interesting. I've heard of that one, but I've never seen it before. "It's not fair," he said. "I don't want to go back to jail." I asked him what his prior conviction was. "That's just it. I already went to jail for this house thing. I got 15 days. The judge gave me 15 days last month." "What?" The man said more words, and then more words, but his words didn't make sense. He was talking about a lot of different things, but not in the right order. It took me almost 30 minutes to figure out what had happened at the coffee shop around the corner. By the time he finished, I was excited. I was really excited. I was super excited. So let me get this straight, I said. The bank noticed you were wrecking the house with power tools when they came to check things out. Right. He was going to say more, but I stopped him. And when they saw what you were doing, they got a court order telling you to stop wrecking the house. Right, and I stopped him again. And after you got that court order, you wrecked the house even more. I was pretty mad. Wouldn't you be, if you were being kicked out of your own home? And when the bank saw that you'd broken the court order, they brought a motion for contempt. Yeah, and the judge gave me 15 days. And I served the whole 15. No parole or anything. That seemed harsh, but when I looked into it, I learned it was true. Some prison officials thought that the parole rules didn't apply to people convicted of contempt. That's pretty harsh, I said. Do you think you can do something for me? We made an appointment for him to come to my office later that week. After our appointment and after I received his retainer check, I started to dance around like a crazy person. I rushed into Aaron's office. You'll never believe this, I said. I have a new case. Yeah, said Aaron, the lawyer who rented me space in his office. He was in his mid-40s, technically married, but he was going to get a divorce, and he was always arguing with his ex-wife. Do I get a piece? He was always worried about money because his family law lawyer was really expensive. I shook my head. Nope, I found this client myself. And you'll never guess how I'm gonna plead him. Guilty? Of course not. I hated pleading clients guilty. It was something I only did as a last resort. I was in court to help people stay out of jail, not to put them in jail. So not guilty. Nope, I said. So you got your first insanity plea. Congratulations. Aaron found me funny, and maybe a little strange. I'd been a lawyer for almost 3 years, but I still loved my job. I still love it now, after more than 30 years. Nope, you'll never guess. Guess what? Said Dimitris, walking in. He had become Aaron's partner a year ago, which was a bad decision on Aaron's part. That promotion is what started them both on the path to getting their law licenses taken away. I got this new case, and I'm going to plead the guy autrefois convict. They stared at me, confused. I decided to teach them. Aside from the usual guilty or not guilty, there's 2 other pleas, autrefois acquit, and autrefois convict. You pled a guy autrefois convict if he's already been convicted of the thing he's charged with. When I learned about autrefois pleas in law school, I thought I would never get a chance to use one. I had never heard of anyone pleading it. It was just one of the millions of things I learned in law school that I forgot about. I thought it was something I would never need. I mean, how often do people get charged with the same thing twice? That's it, said Aaron. That's why you're excited? Because you're pleading this autrefois thing? Aaron didn't understand. Dimitris didn't understand either. When I got home that night, I told my wife all about it, and she didn't really get it either. She's not a lawyer, but she understood how happy I was. Plus the $1,000 retainer made us both happy. The next month, my client's case came up. I was ready. I was really excited. I checked the list and saw that I had Judge Herman. He was also known as the Hermanator, but I didn't mind. The Hermanator was really tough, but he respected good legal arguments, and I had a good one that day. I walked into the lawyer's lounge and grabbed a cup of coffee. It was really bad coffee, but that's all they had. In less than an hour I was going to be in a courtroom. I was going to plead my client autrefois convict, and when I said those words, everyone was going to be surprised. Pens would stop writing, mouths would stop moving, and everyone would turn to look at the strange plea. They would look at the lawyer who had entered the unusual plea, and they would say, who is this young lawyer, this new Robinette, this Greenspan, this Cicero, this, hey, what do you have today? It was Kurt the dump truck, Kurt of the quick and dirty guilty pleas. Prosecutors loved Kurt, judges loved Kurt, but defense lawyers hated him, and he wasn't really welcome in the lawyer's lounge. A plea, I said, feeling proud. Just one? I've got 6. That's a record for me. I only had 5 coming in, but I picked up another. That's great, Kurt, just great. Kurt's work couldn't compare to mine today. I was pleading a guy autrefois convict, and I didn't care how well Kurt was doing, or how badly my practice was doing. I was in legal heaven. But I didn't enjoy Kurt's company, so I left him and the bad coffee in the lawyer's lounge and went to find my client. I found him sitting on a bench outside the courtroom. We had a short conversation. What do you mean you switched lawyers? I said, I talked to this guy, he said. What guy? He handed me a card, but I knew what it would say before I looked at it. Kurt Mandrick. The card said, barrister, solicitor and dump truck. But why? I asked. Why would you want to switch lawyers on the day of your court case? I know the case inside out, I'm totally prepared. We're gonna plead you yeah, about that autrefois thing. Mr. Mandrick says he's never heard of it. He says it's not really a plea. He says it's just going to make the judge mad. Dump truck Kurt had never heard of the plea of autrefois convict, and he had made his client believe it was a bad idea. I tried to explain the autrefois convict plea again, But the client wouldn't listen, and it's hard to change someone's mind if they have a bad idea. Yeah, so Mr. Mandrick says he gets along great with the judges, and he told me I'd get out of jail with no jail time, for sure. Wait here. I left my client on the bench and went back to the lawyer's lounge to talk to Kurt. When I opened the door to the lounge, there were a few of the older lawyers there, like always. A couple of them were talking, and another one was writing notes. Kurt was sitting in the corner. I didn't want to embarrass Kurt or anything like that, and I had always been good at knowing how to be polite and calm in difficult situations. What the, Kurt? I shouted. Pens stopped writing, mouths stopped talking, and heads turned to look at me. Kurt looked up, shocked. What the, I said again. You stole my client, the guy who wrecked his house. The older lawyers looked disapprovingly. I turned to them and pointed at Kurt. He stole my client right in the hallway. I'm on the record, I got a retainer and all that, and this dump truck stole my client, and now he's gonna plead him guilty. He wants to plead guilty, Kurt said. Only because he's an idiot. I left the lawyer's lounge and went back to where my client was waiting. I could hear the dump truck following me. Kurt and I started arguing in front of my client. It was really ugly and embarrassing, especially since I lost. I lost to Kurt of the guilty pleas, Kurt the dump truck. I had to admit defeat. Fine, I said, but I'm going to watch. I'm going to get my money's worth. What do you mean? The client said. I'm keeping your retainer. You're not getting a penny back. We argued more loudly, and we didn't stop until it was time to go into the courtroom and watch the Hermanator. I sat there for an hour, listening to adjournments and pleas, and then it was my former client's turn, and his new lawyer, Kurt. It was time for Kurt to work his magic. I watched as Kurt made his client plead guilty, without talking to the prosecutor, without preparing, without doing anything. My client's a first offender, Kurt said, talking about how his client had never been in trouble before, about how his client had done something crazy, how he was sorry, and how he would never do anything like that again. But this was Judge Herman's courtroom, and Herman liked to be tough. He gave the client 30 days. The client stood up, but the last time the judge only gave me 15. It's not fair. 15 days for what? Said the judge. 15 days for wrecking a house. The judge turned to the prosecutor. I thought you said no priors. The prosecutor shook his head. Nothing that I can see. Well, said the judge, he's admitted to a prior, and I'm entitled to believe in admission against interest. He turned back to the man standing in the dock. I was going to give you 30, but seeing as you have a prior, and for the same thing, Kurt could only say, but. Then he turned and looked at me, like he needed my help. He mouthed something to me, and I think he said, what was that plea? But I ignored him, and I watched as the Hermanator gave the client 60 days. The client started to talk, but it was the same nonsense he had been saying in the coffee shop. The judge told him to be quiet and sit down. When I walked out, Kurt was trying to get the judge to let his client serve his time on weekends, but the Hermanator didn't let people do that. I didn't need to hear the rest. I went back to the lawyer's lounge and told everyone there what had happened. We all laughed at Kurt. When I got home that night, my wife asked how the case went, the case with the special plea. It went great, really great, I said. And I gave her a check for $1,000. And it was great, actually, because the older lawyers in the lounge treated me like one of them. I felt their respect, and that made it all worth it.